Hey, welcome back to Vice Grip Garage. I have got to get Charlotte the race truck complete and fired up. Get it ready for Cletus and Cars in Indianapolis, May 6th and 7th, and we're running out of time. I don't know why I do that. I don't have a wristwatch. We've got a lot to do, ignition, fuel, everything. Let's jump in. It's been a while since we were on the race truck here with just events and traveling and revivals and doing other stuff. So I think we should just start with a summary of where we're at. It'd be good for me too. I've got parts and instructions and things and to-do lists everywhere around here. So let's take a closer look. So the obvious things here, and the bulk of the work is done. Engine, transmission's in, drive shaft. We've got the rear end buttoned up. We've built the kind of the electronics board. We've got a fuel tank in here. The batteries are in. So we're really to the point now where I've got to finish up this Terminator X wiring. We got to get things like the lightning whirler fired up so I can get that dialed in. We've got to get power to relays so I can start figuring out electric fans and the digitals, power steering box and stuff like that. So I think we're going to jump right in and start working on relays and our charging system and things of that nature, and start working this way with all the wiring until we can get up to the engine here and start getting things plugged in, get our throttle body on here, which is massive. Wait until you see this thing. It is ginormous. We'll get some juice squirters in here and some fuel rails and just really start moving towards getting this thing fired. Even if it doesn't have brakes or a shifter or a seat or anything, I want to hear this thing run and start working on the tune a little bit, and then we can finish up the non-important stuff, the beforehand mentioned brakes and how to steer it and stuff like that. As long as the rear tires recycle, we should be fine. So originally I put this MSD solid state relay block in here, and I tried to pre-plan a lot of this as much as possible because I've been terrible in the past about putting a bunch of stuff in and then going, well, that's not right. And then, deleting on it and redoing it. So I got close. We're actually going to be upgrading that one unit, everything else the same, because it's really good, but it's a 20 amp per channel. And I'm going to need more than that for my fans. So essentially I would have to tie 1 and 2 together and 3 and 4 together just to run my fans, and that leaves me out in the weeds all alone for things like a fuel pump. So I upgraded to this big dog right here. This is a 4-channel relay, solid state relay, and these are 40 amps per channel with a built-in fuse right here. So now I can run fan 1, fan 2, fuel pump, and I'll have an extra. If we want to run a digital trans fan or something else, we've got it here. So I've got to pop this off quick and just throw this in quick. Probably not going to do it as neat and pretty as the other stuff because we just got to get moving forward. And then I'll probably go ahead and mount our battery charger box in there as well, just so the real estate is taken up and I can see how it looks, and we can start running some of these wires and things like that. I also had to return the other box and get this supply unit here. I accidentally got the wrong one. My intention is to charge both of these batteries back here, these 16 volters, independently. This is going to be a beltless truck. There's not going to be a single belt on it. There's not a charging system or anything like that. Well, the one I had before only did 1 battery. This is the one I needed to run 2. So now I'll have another positive, the happy cable coming out of here. And here's the other one, of course. And they'll float charge or recharge or reboostilize or fill up both of these units independently. We'll just plug it in right here, plug it into a generator or a light pole or whatever. It'll do its thing. And then we've got a nice little heads-up display that came with this unit that'll be somewhere in the truck so I can see the voltages of each battery. And it should help just monitoring where we're at and things of that nature. So let me jump in, get this done quick, and then we'll come up with you know, most likely whatever's easiest next. Look, I get it. This isn't really super, you know, really exciting stuff, but it's got to get done. We got to knock it off the list. I've got quite a bit done here. I'll give you some updates. Got the charger box mounted. Yes, it's technically upside down, but it's electro-digital. I don't think it matters whatsoever, the orientation of the box. And I wanted it this way because it's got all the switches and doodads and selectors and whatnots and inputs and, you know, barrel wahoo's on that side. This side is just a power switch and the cord, which I have ran over here. And this is just where we're going to plug it in. You can run these on a generator as long as they're 120/60. It's got some sort of filter on it. Otherwise, you got to use, you know, what do they call it? Shore power? I don't know. You plug it into a regular outlet. That's what I'm saying. We got down here the MSD 4-channel relay module put in. We got fan 1, fan 2, fuel pump, and power steering is what we're going to end up using the last one for, because I noticed, and I'll show you in just a second, the wire coming out of the power steering, its electric hydraulic power steering box, is like an 8 gauge. It's like this size. That's some whopping power. So we weren't going to run it straight off of this vacuum pump relay here all the way up there. This would cook. We'd lose power steering. So instead I'm using this relay as a trigger. It's going to come into this relay and trigger this power, and we'll come out of channel 4 here and run another 8 gauge over to the power steering. Again, these are fans. I'll show you those in a second. And this is fuel here, which runs up, and we've got the yellow and red tied together. So we've got low and high speed. This thing's just going to be ripping at all times. Still got to run the earth. You know, the SAD cable. Right there. That's going to swing down, come into one of these pegs here. Again, this is grounded, or bonded, I should say, right to the frame. And then these are the batteries here. We also have the starter already hooked up. This is the fan trigger. So I took out the crossbar in this, so we're not switching negative. We're switching the happies. So that's just looped over. So when I hit the fan switch in the cabin, which is going to be up on this here, boop, boop, that's going to flip both these relays. Boom, the fan should be ripping. These are 40 each. That should be just fine. Basically, all I've got left here is water pump, ignition, and computer. We're getting pretty close on that stuff. Now the fans, I kind of just roughed them in. That's just running up here. I was trying to use a bunch of leftover wire, this stuff here, because it actually says primary and secondary fan on it. I think it's part of an old, I can't remember what universal fuse panel kit that's from, but it was too short, is what I'm trying to say. So the colors are going to be whatever I have. I really don't care. I mean, let's just get it done with what we have and cheap as possible. Green here, this is going to be a fuel pump, and that's going to be tying into this green up here. As soon as I land this main harness wherever I feel it needs to go. We've got 12 volt constant, we've got ground, we've got ignition, we've got fuel pump. The red and white over here is going to be 12 volt switched. That's going to be the computer button right here. So I could turn on or off the computer, which is a Holley essentially. That way we can run, we can try to start it without having the computer on, so we could test compression or roll the engine over or something like that. If we actually want to fire it, we can hit ignition and computer, or if we want to monitor oil pressure, we can turn the computer on, keep the ignition off. It's still going to run the fuel pump, but it's not going to fire. So it gives us a few different options there to being able to roll over the engine here, but not light the thing off is kind of what I'm going for here. And also just trying to keep it basic. I don't want 47 switches in the cabin. Kind of try to keep it simple here. So we're making some progress. Got to finish up some grounding here. I'll show you that power steering I was talking about just a second ago. That's this guy. Look at this. These things are beastly. So I think I'm just going to run this guy
straight to the frame because we've got a really nice bond there. And then this feller is going to run all the way back to the battery. And then this guy is going to run back to our trigger. And I've already tested the lines. Those should be okay-ish. The big challenge with this front cone that we haven't gotten to yet is we got to figure out how to get a radiator and fans to sit in here appropriately at the correct angle. That gives us some options for some hoses and doodads and whatnots. Sweet. That's going to be just a lot of fun. Right now I'm moving on to ignition. We've got a MSD box we're going to be using in here. I've got it tucked up in here. It's an MSD 6A Ultra, and that particular unit is supposed to be able to interface with the Terminator X. So the particular lightning whirler a feller's got is should click. Boop, boop. That's a click noise, I guess. I don't know. I don't have sound effects keyboard. That's going to interface with the Terminator X, so the Terminator X understands what the lightning whirler is doing. That's going to go through the system. It's going to send a signal out to that MSD Ultra, and that's going to tell that when to fire, basically. And the reason we're doing that is so we still have onboard timing control. We can set up timing tables and all of that, just like independent Chevelle. For example, once that starts hitting safeties, intake air temperature is too high, intake air temperature is too high, fuel pressure is too low, oil pressure is too low. It'll start pulling timing, fuel, all of that stuff. Well, we're going to be doing the same thing here essentially, because basically our goal is to go wide open throttle for 3 minutes flat out minimum. So we want to make sure we get through that whole thing. So hopefully this works. It's kind of a hodgepodge idea I've got. It should do the thing per the constructions. We'll just have to see what happens. So speaking of the ignitions, we've got the controller boop bop beep bop boop lightning box mounted, but we're gonna need this bad boy right here. This is the coil, ignition coil. And I think I want to mount that way back here on this bar. Kind of front and center. We can come straight across, keep it nice and neat, but it's going to be out of the way because I think I'm going to have fuel pressure regulator right here with a line coming in, line coming out, and coming over here. But we don't have a bracket or a pad for that. So I'm going to go over on the computer box, struggle for 17 days, try to make some sort of bracket try for this that we can either weld or screw into the frame, and then this can bolt to that and have a nice sturdy mount under there. Well, here's what a guy's got. Boy, I got it clean. Drawn up here on the old beep boop box. Should be a basic mount. It's not to scale at the minute, but that should go right on there, and then in the center we can just, screw it in or weld it, or I don't know yet, okay? Got that mount whipped up here real quick and put some rubber standoffs on it. These actually just come in the kit for the beep boop lightning storm maker here, but that'll fit on there nice like that. So now all I've got to do is mount this up back in there, kind of tuck it back in, and we'll shoot the wiring off this way. It doesn't really matter for this lightning hose, but at least the wires will be pointing off this way towards the MSD box. And we'll kind of try to keep all that rat's nest back over here. Thought about looming everything in here, but quite honestly, I just don't care enough. And it's an extra expense, let's be honest. Plus, I'm wiring it. So there's a chance that all of this gets melty and licoricey and there's going to be fire and I'm going to have to replace things. So it's going to be nice just having loose wire kind of hanging out here and there. So I think I'm just going to mount this up in here real quick. And then we'll get that coil on. Right thing to do here would be pre-drill this stuff, but definitely not going to do that then. All right. Oh, just pretend. Is this the way this goes now? Yeah. Something like this? I don't know. Sure. Oh boy. Ouch! Injury! Injury! Oh. Knew that was gonna happen. Let's do it again. Oh no, I can't reach it. Oh. So much fiberglass everywhere. Why is that running? Oh. So the right thing to do here would be to pre-drill this, you know, so it doesn't slip off. So we're definitely not going to do that. Self-tappers are like zip ties of the 21st century. That's looking groovy. Is that still a word? Allison's down in Galveston. Something, something. Wonder what George Strait's doing. There we go. Now, get some hardware. Beep boop that right in. All my exes live in Texas. And that's why I hang my hat in Tennessee. This should work pretty good. So that's mounted up in its resting place there. We should have plenty of wire and a stock connector to make those connections. Try not to add any extra wire because this stuff's just getting out of hand these days. Okay, now I think I need to make a decision on this main harness. And what I mean by decisions is just where to like land it or make it where it's going to go for its forever home. That's what I'm trying to say. Because I need to start running basically all this junk has to go back to our beep boop panel. So I don't want to cut it, splice it, connect it, then go, oh, I need another 2 inches. That's really going to mess everything up. So I think the farthest forward I'm going to have is probably coolant, which is going to be here or maybe even here. I guess it doesn't really matter. So I've got to try to figure out that, and then we can work backwards and zip tie it up somewhere and then finish up this stuff. You fellers or fellettes may have noticed over here in the background, whilst working on the truck here, we got the 68 Bonneville back here, and Sandon, the owner of the rig, is actually putting in quite a bit of work the last few days. I wanted to do all this for him and surprise him, but I just had to be honest with him. And I got, my hoofs tied up right now. I ain't moving as quick as I can typically, and my schedule's been crazy. We've been doing revivals and traveling, so he's just been over here having fun working on the rig. I'm just gonna give you a quick update because he's putting in a lot of stuff actually. Check this out. So I think he's gone through the brakes now. Pretty sure. He's in the process of putting brand new shocks in it. He's putting air shocks in the rear. He's deleted on the old whistle doos, cover uppers back here. He's put in a new fuel tank because I did find after the drive there, we were getting a bunch of debris and stuff up in the filters and it was starving for fuel. So we put a new tank in, sending unit. I went ahead and surprised him with new exhaust. The guys at Volunteer Muffler and Performance did that. Flowmasters, True Duals, sounds absolutely amazing. He started sanding on it with some Scotch-Brite because we're going to clear this with that Vice Grip Garage Clear. So he's getting rid of some of the rust and kind of just adding a little bit of that patina look to it. And what's going to really change the look of this car here today probably, we got old school Kragers and white letter tires. I'll be sure to show you guys that when we get to that point. Let's pop the hood here. I'm not quite sure what he's been doing under the hood. I know he's been piddling around with a little bit, a couple fuel filter changes, things like that. But I also noticed after I got this thing running, it wasn't charging and I just barely limped it home. I had this Power Master up on the shelf. This was a spare actually for the ramp truck, a big, I think this is 125. And it was the right pulley and everything like that, or the case, I guess, there's different GM cases. So he threw this in here, he threw some new belts on it, and that fixed that issue. Really nice running car, runs just fantastic. So whenever we get the tires and wheels on that thing, maybe today, I don't know what's happening, all right? But I'll be sure to fill you guys in because it's gonna completely transform this thing. And also when we lay the clear on it, I'll get you guys in here on that as well. I think that's really gonna, it's like a silverish, bluish. It's just gonna make her zing. All right, let's get back on this race truck here. We still got a lot left. Well, the guy doesn't really know what to do with my hands here. Tip assist. I think that goes up there. Ayaka. I think that goes up there. Matt. I went to grade school with the Matt. I wonder what he's doing. I think that goes up there. This one's not labeled. Maps. I don't have any global positioning systems on the vehicle. Don't think I need that one. That one's also not labeled. The citises. I know from experience that is the coolant. So we'll plug that into nothing. And then I think we'll just bring this up here for now. I think this could work. Maybe another zip tie over here. There! That's tighter than my wallet, and I ain't kidding you. Okay. That'll at least give me somewhere to start as far as this wiring goes. Injector harness, ignition harness. What is this big dog? WBO2. It's like an Obi-Wan Kenobi's cousin or something. I don't know what that is. Starting to look like a Laffy Taffy jungle gyms around here, and the sweat is beating on the forehead. I ain't gonna kid you. Listen, I think what I'm gonna do is run some digital tape around these because I'm gonna bring them around this harness, basically the same path as this. Back around here and probably stop right here because I gotta grab into this guy. This is my 12 volt switched. And then we're gonna have another harness coming out of this lightning storm maker that's gotta come into here. We gotta do some connections here as well, like this white one. But that'll clean it up to this junction. And then we're gonna have to send power and ground and fuel pump back this way. And I think I said earlier, but I can't remember where. Oh yeah, this one, I believe, goes all the way over to computer right there. And this is the trigger for the fuel pump, this green one. So these two greens can be connected over here. I'm just going with the flow, okay? So Santa's under here putting air shock lines in right now. I just wanted to show you a couple things. Number one, we found the build sheet, or he did, under the floor, under the sound deadening, which is pretty wild. It's fairly intact, probably 85% intact. But check this out. We were questioning whether or not this was a 50-some thousand mile car. I was pretty certain it was based on everything that I saw under the hood and in the cabin, but now I'm positive. Look at this. Original sticker on the drum. That's never been replaced or even messed with. And we even have a sticker on the frame rail. I mean, this thing is a peach. It's never even been out in the snow, I would assume, or a ton of rain, because this would have just washed right off. It's just a very delicate sticker. So, being this is a yacht, the airline kit that came with is a little short, so he's putting a temp one in right now. He's got a couple ordered to get it to the back, but this will get enough. We can get some height and hopefully get those tires and wheels in. Well, it doesn't really look like it, but let me tell you what, fellers and fellas, there is a lot of work put into this thing. Wiring is one of those things that just doesn't look, doesn't look like nothing changes. But it did. We've got pretty much all of our SAD cables hooked up, most of our positive cables. We've got, this is a relay and ignition and all that stuff. All of this is pretty well wired up. All we have left is water pump, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, and power steering, and that's really it for bringing cableage back here. I've even got the additional battery wire hooked up, and this is hooked up, so we're good to charge. Batteries are lit up, SAD cable's in. I mean, really, if I turn that battery knob up there, we've got power, which is what we're working towards because we got to get the charger whirler finished up. We've got fuel pump fuse here, fuel pump relay there. This is our CAN bus. We'll be running that up to a screen. I think I'm going to have to order an extender because we're going to go all the way over there for that, but that's a problem for another day. I have to verify, but I think these two white ones go together, and this might be our TAC output. If we run a secondary TAC, we're probably just going to run the CAN bus there. But I'm to a point now, I've got to get wiring done up front here. This is going to be the fans. Coming down here, we need a wire for the water pump, which we just talked about, and then we need a big old dog for that power steering pump. I think I'm going to pull it all down over here. I'll probably grind this down, drill a hole, put a nut in, and this is going to be my central ground location for the water pump, both the fans, and I might even do the same technique over here, drill a hole, grind it down, weld a nut in for the power steering, because I'm 142.67% confident we've got a really good, body frame ground, I guess you can call it. It's not tightened right now. And then we're going to have engine ground right here, and there's going to be, everything's going to be pretty well grounded. Plus, remember, these are solid mounted as well as far as the engine goes, so these are technically bonded as well. We're moving, it's slow, but we're getting there. Now it's really weird, but I did make a mistake. I had to do a scoosh of rewiring, so I went ahead and prettied some stuff up here. The power steering, there's a power, there's a SAD cable, and then there's a trigger. And what I had accidentally done was ran the main power into the relay, which is running off of this vacuum pump relay up here. So we have a mechanical relay going into the solid state relay. Well, I needed to switch that, so rather than pull power, main power from there, I had to flip it back over to this bar for main power, and then I left this ran the way it is, but then I had to run a whole new wire up front. I also took a wire off that was feeding the starter. It kind of ran down through here willy-nilly, ran that up through there, kind of tidied everything up. It's coming together, I think. For the second time, I'll say this is pretty much done. Over here, cleaned this up as well, ran some Tessa tape instead of those giant zip ties. Tessa tape this stuff as well. Went ahead and ran some loom on that because this chunk of loom was on the main power wire for the ECU, which we ended up not using. So this was just laying around, and instead of wasting it, went ahead and just reused it here. So this is going to be fans and that water pump like we talked about earlier. Got the main power and the trigger for the power steering box up here, so I'm going to snip those. I'm going to go ahead and move on to getting my ground nuts in here and then setting that front nose piece on. I think that's going to look really good. Quick update on the Bonneville, looking really sharp. Still got to put center caps on and paint the drums and some other stuff, but boy, that changed that car. Well, the guy did go ahead and threw it up that bumper up here, and just kind of scanned the peepers on it. Because I think I was going to put those grounds here, which is why it's shiny. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to get in the way or whatever else, and I think we're going to be fine. I got some hardware, I already lost it. It's like 3/8 24 fine thread stuff, so
I'm going to drill a hole on each side here for that ground. There we go. That side. Repeat the procedure. Repeating. Repeating. How many did I go in? 1, 2, 3, 4. That should do. So when I do this, you got to be careful, fellers, because if you just weld the nut on by itself and then try to run your bolt in there, you could have warped that puppy, something fierce, and it ain't going to work. So what I like to do is go ahead and run your bolt into that nut and just push the bolt into the hole that you've drilled for the bolt and the nut, and then just hold that there and tack weld her on, let her cool, and then it's not going to shrink past the size of the bolt. Might be a little tight, but it'll come out of it. Ja. Herse. Ooh. Herbst. And Hesse. Sure. Man, I should have a hood on. I am not hitting anything. Ain't pretty, but the job is done. What's my black's doing? Don't hear from him much anymore. Okay. I gotta weld this washer on. Gives us a flange for our connectors. There we go. Done. Good news. Good news. All right. Got them buzzed in here. I like to use a washer whenever possible, so when your fitting comes on there, it's not just sitting against the face of a nut, and then we'll put another washer on this side and really sandwich her in there. Gonna find whatever color paint this was or something remotely close, something I have laying around, and then I think we can go ahead and throw this on and just leave it on for now, because we need to wire that up. We got to get power steering lines in eventually. And the big task is we got to fit the rad in here and figure out how that's going to work. We might just plan to never run a hood, because as you can see, that's already going to be an issue anyway. So it might be close. I'm not sure. We got fan depth. There's a lot of work, is what I'm saying. Okay. Yep. When you lift heavy things, fellers, you want to make sure to use all your back and do it in a fast jerking motion. There we go. That seems to be that. Something like this, I can't remember. Leave that out of the way. This has a connector on it right here. So if we plug these in solid, boop, with the butt connector, for servicing this or whatever, which is the way I wanted it to be designed, there's a connector here. We can just unplug the pump, both of these wires, and pull the front off. So I'm hoping to set this up where we could take the rad, the pump, if we have an overflow tank, just everything comes off in one piece. You know, so when this puppy goes, it's easier to pull it out and put something else in. That's the plan anyway. Okay, that's good sitting funny. I don't like the way that looks. Gotta be honest.
Got the earth hooked up over here to the PS digital unit box, and all this is done here as well. Gonna come back and work on these hoses here in a second. Got all the earths hooked up here. This is gonna be the fans, as a reminder of the other, and then I'm leaving plenty of room on this because I don't know how dicey it's gonna get in here for the old hosilators for the ice cube juice. We got one up there obviously as well, and these are gonna be the SAT cables for the fans. So over here on this unit, basically this is a Volvo electric pump, and this is what the interwebs told me we should give a shot or try, and we're going to do that. And if it works, boy, do I got some other applications. Basically, there's an electric motor in here. The reservoir is built in, creates high pressure right here, and then this is the return. And then I went on the lines to the Jungle website and got some just El Cheapo pre-made. This is the standard GM gearbox fittings. So we've got a return line there. Looks to be long enough. Sure, whatever, why not? This is the high pressures. That's going to be going in here, and we might have to rotate these fittings just a scoosh. Not sure yet, you know what I mean? They definitely were made to go into a Volvo pump into this here, but we're going to try to make it happen. Looks like these were AN fittings. So I'm going to back these out and hope that this hasn't been tapped for something else and it's still the original fitting. That would be very nice. I think they're the same on both ends. But I'd like to get this buttoned up, and we could essentially, if I just temporarily put the switches in, we could turn the battery dial, hit the vacuum pump, and fire this thing up tonight and see if it does power steering things. This is kind of one of those things. You know, power steering's always been a luxury, pretty much my entire life. And you don't necessarily have to have it for a burnout competition, but boy, when you need it, you need it. I'll tell you that much right now. Get yourself in a pickle and you got to correct yourself really quick. You got to make split-second decisions, otherwise you're going to be up against the K barrier, and that's where this is going to come in handy. Plus, we're definitely not going to fix any of the atrocious alignment on this. It's set to go left and left only, so we'll just leave that alone. We ain't got the time, you know what I mean? Plus, what are we looking at? I don't know, you know what I mean? So power steering will help power through it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We got a bigger and we got a smaller. Is that the same story? I don't know if it is. That one seems to be going in. Nope. Now does it seem to be? That one seems to be going in. It's good. This one, high pressure, that's what I'm worried about. I don't think that's going to work. I do not think that's going to work, unfortunately. The fitting is very loose in there. This looks great, though. I mean, that's going to work just fine. The return. Ooh, we might have to come through here. Yeah, we could even make the return work, but I gotta figure out this fitting. What about love? So I'm assuming, like I say, the low pressure is going to be fine. Here's the issue. I don't know what it. Oh, here it is. Is that the? That's not the right one. Anyway, the original fitting for the high pressure side is longer. It has more threads. What's happening is this flared hose is not bottoming out in the female side. So I could tighten this all the way down to where it's hitting. You can see where I marred it up, but the hose still moves. So if we were to fire this up, juice would hit the ceiling fans, and I ain't kidding you. So here's that other fitting for comparison's sake. See how there's a couple more threads on it towards the nut? And that's what's seating this one anyway, all the way down. So there's two options here. I could run to town tomorrow, have a new hose built. I could bring this in and say, make sure the end is like that. It'd probably be 50, 60 bucks. Okay. Second option is I could just run a flap disc on here and bring this boss down just a little bit and see if we can get this fitting to work. Now that would throw a bunch of metal shavings and junk in here and potentially end up ruining our gear set and or our pump. It's not good. So that's the way I'm going to try first, is just go ahead and grind on that, see what happens, and then we'll spend the money if we have to. This is a terrible idea.
Shoved a bunch of rags down here, so hopefully that'll do nothing. I also wet them up a little bit so they don't light on fire. Whoa, whoa. Easy. Am I even hitting what I'm after here? Well, how much does the guy need? I don't know. I think that's all I dare go, because we don't want to ruin up the gearbox. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, that did nothing. That's good. You're not going to believe this, but yeah, it didn't work. So I guess I'm running all the way into town tomorrow. We're not going to be able to test that tonight, but that's okay. We can keep moving. You got to keep the feet shuffling. I'll get this pumpilator wired in, tape that up, and I think we'll bring her down. Let's start looking at putting the injector harness in, fuel injectors, maybe even the fuel rails. And I got to show you this throttle body. It is bigger than my head. I'm serious. It's like 2 watermelons. No, it ain't. It's not that big. It's big though.
Before we get too far up here, going to make sure we got batteries if we're going to test a couple things at least. We won't be able to do the whole gamut, but went ahead and just temporarily got the controller just looped in here. That'll eventually end up in the cabin somewhere. Got the digital extension cord. Switch is on. I've got the main switch off because we don't want to send, 60 amps through the computer and all that stuff. So we're shutting that off there. So it's just charging the batteries. Come in here. Turn the fan. There we go. It's at 12.9. So it definitely needs charged. There it goes. I think that'll be okay. Okay, so we'll let that cook a little bit. We'll start figuring out some more stuff up here.
Well, this charger's really got some wind coming out of her. Every good project starts with the batteries on boil. Write that down. We're moving on to injectors here. This is a multi-port injected system. So what that means is each cylinder or intake runner essentially has its own fuel injector, as opposed to a fuel make it happener, which is pretty much just a garden hose jammed down the center of the intake and some sort of throttle blades to modulate that, or like a sniper, same principle as a carburetor, but the squirters are inside of the carburetor body kind of deal. I'm going to go with these injectors by Holley here. They look tiny, but boy do they got some bark. These are 120 pound an hour injectors. Nice little body on these things. Going to lube these up, drop them into the intake here, and we're not going to be finished with the fuel system yet, but at least everything's going to be plugged up. We're not going to get any debris down in here, and we'll slowly start working towards plumbing the fuel, which although it's short, there's a lot to do. There's returns, and I got to put a Y in here, and a regulator, and a pressure sensor, and you name it. I got a cap down here on the intake, and it's full of Rotella diesel oil. The 1540 flavor. We're going to use that as some lubrication. Just don't put these in dry. I don't care what you use, fellas. Spit on them for all I care. But don't jam these in dry. And if you know why I'm using the Rotella, go ahead and beep boop that down below so folks that are new to the channel can get updated on that. Boop. There it goes. One in, 11.4 million to go. I wonder what an 11.4 million engine would sound like. It would probably be deafening. It'd be like a room full of ex-wives. You know what I mean? Whew. Okay. That one's in. Oh, my hands are so greasy now. I can't get a hold of nothing. That one's probably broken. Working these in gentle so I don't mess up the O-rings on them. I got enough work to do as it is. Okay? Now, where's my broken one? Don't let me forget that that's number 1 cylinder, so when we've got a misfire over there, we could diagnose fuel as well. Sure. Blow on it, jam it in. There we go. Injectors injected. Of course, the guy's using the Holley fuel rails. I don't have all of the hardware for these yet, but I want to get these injectors capped off. You know, keep it clean. Well, give me a minute. I'm getting it out of the box. Wonder if you could play this like, I don't know. Learned to play Three Blind Mice way back in the day on the recorder. I can't even imagine how crazy I drove my parents thinking about that today. All right, that is in, and that's looking really sharp. Injectors and fuel rails. Wiring up these injectors is really simple. It's really just plug and play. What am I stepping on? I don't know. It can wait. But you got to be a little bit careful, fellers. This is why I'm bringing it up. Make sure you're getting the right style harness for your injectors or vice versa. As an example, the injector harness that came with this kit is an EV1, which is very typical. But the injectors that I got are an EV6 style. These little guys here, because they have a different connector. So really pay attention to that so you're not wasting money or putting yourself between a pickle and a piece of bread. You know what I mean? Now, I gotta go through, and these are all labeled on here. Like this says injector 6, injector 8, so on and so forth. And on this end, literally all we have to do is grab my injector mother harness here. Boop. That's wired. I guess I can handle that much of wiring. Okay, so now, just got to route this the way I want. Get my odds on one side, my evens on the other, and start clipping these in. 8. Sure. 6. Yep. 4. Here you are. That must mean you're 2, you little devil. Okay. So that's really it for injector wiring. I did go ahead and run it underneath the intake here. I just thought, well, I mean, we're not building a show truck by any means. We're not even attempting that, but only take a couple of minutes more and we hit a little bit more wiring. Might even try to run that coolant temperature sensor underneath there as well. I think I did that on the Chevelle. And we did some wire hiding on the Hemi half and some other things in the crew cab. And this looks a little bit better. Doesn't take that long. We're definitely not going to be shortening or lengthening any of these harnesses. In fact, Holley doesn't recommend that, but if you feel you need to, you know, but we're not. Like I said, I'm missing some hardware in here. Not really worried about that yet. Just wanted to get this capped off. Start making a shopping list for
all of the parts and pieces that I'm going to need for plumbing. But right now we can go ahead and get back to the throttle body. We'll set that on, take a look at that, make sure we have all the right connectors, continue making the shopping list here. And then we should have enough juice in the batteries where we can do some very basic initial tests here. So as a review here, we've got 460 cubic inches of Chevrolet big block power here. We've got a big old nasty cam in this thing. It's the same one we've had, but it sounds like the intro to Hot for Teacher. You know what I mean? It's pretty nice. Now we're throwing a bunch of fuel at this thing, which means we're gonna need a ton of air into this engine to make sure we can tune this up and get the most horsepower and torque out of this thing. And I got just the unit. Look at this thing. This looks like a carburetor. Tricky, right? But it's actually a 2000 CFM throttle body is what this is. And you can see over here we've got a throttle position sensor and whatnot. So this is going to be going on top of the rig. Goodness gracious. Just like that. Kind of gives it that old school look, but it's going to give us all the airflow we need. Now I can start looking at the TPSs and figuring out some of these other connectors and doodads. Wow, that looks great. Let's see. That's the O2 sensor. We can send that downtown. Get out of here. Should just put that in quick, actually. These gotta come this way. Guy's gonna pop this O2 sensor in quick. This is another easy connector we can get done up top. Well, I think I got that in. I held it up here temporarily with some zip ties and I came back with the Testa tape and snugged her up that way. I had to put this adapter Rooney in to get from the O2 into the harness here. It comes in the kit, but if you lose that, guy can get confused. These are the output dongles here. If we want to do any more outputs, we'll just kind of let them hang there for now. So that has one more connector out the way. That's map. We'll probably run straight off of the intake right on board down here. One of these is oil, one of them's fuel. I got to figure that out. We got Matt. That's that one guy, you know. Tipuses, coolant, and IAC. Let me try that. Well, I think we should go ahead and test what we got going on here. So let's get in here and turn this off. It says we got 16 volts. So that's off. We're good there. Now, let's run the battery. It's just number one, which should be plenty. I've got this temporarily plugged in. You can see the lights came on here. Now, we don't want to spin it over because we got to set the timing still. And guys on TDCs, don't want to mess that up. However, we can turn water pump on. There it goes. That easy. I like that it turns from red to green. Now the big one, computer, I could bring this down here with me. See if we can fire. Well, let's even try ignition. There you go. Good to go. Off. On. Off. So that's working. Now the Terminator, we got one down here called computer. Bingo. That's on, looking great. And off. Yes, so far so good. We can't spin it over like I said. We can't run the fans yet. And the power steering, I gotta go get some hoses in the morning so we can test that. But it seems like in theory, I got my brain wrapped around this mostly correct. So Now it's going to come down to setting timing correctly, making sure that we actually got spark. I still have to verify integration white to white. That's why those two are hanging there. Still have some huge items on the list to check off. Wait until you see how we're going to monitor this thing as far as gauges go. I've wanted this set up my entire life. We finally got one. We need to figure out the radiator, how we're going to do that, how we're going to run the hoses, make sure the fans have clearance, decide if we're going to do an expanded tank or not. We still got a whole body to put on this thing. We have brakes. I haven't even sat in it. We got to put a seat. But nonetheless, we are closer today to firing up this beast and hopefully recycling some tires. Thanks guys for watching. Appreciate it very much. And we'll be back very soon with more NASCAR truck.